Forewarning, that title is somewhat of a lie, as Network Transmission is technically not an RPG. I mean, it tries to incorporate the Battle Network's RPG stylization with the operating Megaman in the cyber world, the general grinding to acquire the power-ups and battleships, and all that which fits into the action RPG classification, but it puts it into the jump-and-shoot platforming that is expected of the normal Mega Man franchise, which just ends up being a very weird mashup, especially for someone that is not good at those games like myself. I mean, next you'll tell me the X series made a turn-based RPG. It's on my list, I swear. I'm just giving this the RPG Hell title so it can stay contiguous with the other Battle Network reviews, as it both is and is not, much like the Batman Arkham games.
Though that too is odd, as I don't normally count Network Transmission as part of the mainline Battle Network series since it's not a numbered game, and its events, aside from one aspect, are never seen nor mentioned again. And of all the Battle Network continuity games, it is one of the least liked, simply because Capcom's movement of the Mega Man titles into this cel-shaded CGI and mix of 2D and 3D platforming was all around poorly executed.
And it was not alone in this. Megaman X7 and X8, you know, the ones with Axel, also had much of the same issues with the transition in their platforming to this new means of rendering levels and characters outside of bitmap sprites that the franchise to this point had been limited to, and the lack of fine control all around with these new models is what severely hindered them. X7 was considered worse than this game upon release, and X8 only slightly better.
And considering most people I talk to tend to love the X series more than the classic Mega Man games due to its main protagonists, X and Zero, that really says something. So Network Transmission wasn't really reflective of the Battle Network series being bad, but with the context of these other two titles, it showed an issue Keiji Inafune's team had for moving out of their existing wheelhouse into CGI platforming. And thanks to the likes of Mighty No. 9, in some respects one could say they never learned how to correct such.
Though there's a reason I'm talking about it now. While the game was developed and released between Battle Networks 3 and 4, continuity-wise, Network Transmission is set between Battle Networks 1 and 2.
This is why several times in the game, the characters allude to and foreshadow events which will happen in the following title to date it with regards to the chronology, as really, at no point are any of the Battle Network sequels planned in advance for a multi-game story arc. They're pretty much just one-and-dones that, while continuity from a previous one does carry onwards, they are not planning to set up the next one in the current installment. They're just smart enough to take advantage of what ideas, themes, and characters are available to them, while bringing in some new ones.
It also explains why many of the Network Transmission original Nabbies would end up being seen in Mega Man Access, which began airing about 7 months after this game's release in preparation for when they'd release Battle Network 4 the following December. And yeah, 2 bad entries back-to-back, and their immediate predecessor being the one considered the best damn game of them all. It was this that would begin the series' decline more than anything.
This is all relevant to discussing this game, as despite being set between games 1 and 2 and using a mixed version of their power-ups, it contains stylization elements present from the third game, such as the PET model Lan is shown using. It also contains a series of extra codes as hidden Easter eggs for players to use in Battle Network 3.
I'll get into the extra code thing more when we actually get to Battle Network 3. Essentially, for the unawares, they're codes which can be input to modify an enhancement program Mega Man first gets in that game to unlock special abilities or trigger the use of special software. And the only way to initially get them was for players to play this game to find them. That, however, is no longer an issue thanks to the likes of GameFAQs.
But otherwise, this game more showcases the transition between Battle Networks 1 and 2, and how much of the chip library uses Battle Network 2 chips, but also attempted to appeal to fans of the first anime series with how many of the battle chip combinations would be showcased in that form.
An example, Network Transmission. Instead of having you use 3 of the same cannon chip in succession to create the program Advanced Zeta Cannon, instead as you use Cannon, High Cannon, and M Cannon. But that in turn is because of how each battle chip in this game is counted as its own round of ammunition, so you can stockpile multiples of the same chip in your folder for a successive code program advance.
Yeah, you could have an entire folder full of completely different chips that just recycle themselves, as long as when you're out and fighting, you didn't use all of its charges up. It's nice! Until you realize they did that because of how it's like the old Mega Man platformers, instead of possessing the turn-based trappings where all of your chip folder is just reset after each battle. Here, you're always in the middle of a battle. You don't get the luxury of resetting your chip folder because you're traveling constantly through hostile territory.
And honestly, I wouldn't have much of an issue with that. I kind of like the idea, but one, each individual chip is either expensive or you need to grind out a ridiculous number of chips to fully stock the ammo, which is made all the worse by the chip drops that you only get from enemies being randomized, which takes forever to actually all do. And two, the maximum ammo stockpile for each chip is ridiculously low. At most, you have 30 rounds, and that shrinks the more powerful the chip is, down to a max of 5 uses. 3 of the chips only being usable once.
And yeah, I can see that being necessary with some of the more powerful ones. I think it would be ridiculous if you could just spam attacks with any of the Navi chips to kill anything on screen.
The normal Battle Network games restrict the number of Navi chips you can use in a folder, after all, for just this reason.
But the limitations for most of the others just prove themselves to be rather asinine, as a lot of the limited to 5 and 2 of the ones limited to 1 are not that powerful, and this all unreasonably increases the difficulty in acquiring chips.
Not out that how they choose to stylize Megaman.exe power-ups exactly like how they would do things in a normal Battle Network game. You start with 100 HP, no armor, and a buster that's pretty much worthless, and you need to hunt down the power-ups to even be able to do damage to the weakest enemies outside of your starting chips, which you will run through very fast due to them being, well, low in quantity, which all contrasts the other Mega Man platforming games where your buster is your best friend, and these special attacks you gain access to are there for special occasions. It's pretty much the reverse here until you can fix up the gun, then it completely flip-flops to your chips just being used for support abilities, at least outside the boss fights, where otherwise a maxed attack max charge buster blows up everything on screen.
And the boss fights end up a weird amalgam of classic Mega Man and the Battle Network games, and how it's back to a walled-in area for the fight with you then need to slide, jump, and shoot the enemy into submission, at least until you get a battle chip that can do uber damage.
A tip I found for playing this game is when you get to a boss encounter, you should deplete every chip in your chip folder that won't be useful against them. So the custom screen only gives you the premium chips for best use against them, more than likely the ones kept around being those that would combine into a program advance.
And oh my yes, is the Zeta Cannon your lord and savior in this game, with its rapid-firing mass damage against bosses and temporary invulnerability. Though this is hindered by you needing to use cannon chips to kill most enemies until you get your buster maxed out in this game, which does take a while and in turn limits the time you can then cast Zeta Cannon.
Though before we get to recapping the story, I just have one question. Why did you not either remove or redub the dialogue?
Much like the complete and utter laziness I would expect from the incompetents at Bandai of America in their handling of Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, where they kept in the Japanese dialogue's audio that straight up gave away how utterly awful their translation was, Network Transmission retains the original Japanese dub of the game. They just removed any voice clips of Lands that refers to Megaman.exe as Rockman, and translated the dialogue. That's really the only difference.
And hey, this is admittedly more appreciated these days when it's difficult to get games that tie into anime or important franchises like this over here unless they're ridiculously popular, or even get the ones that did get imported up on digital services, but this was 2003. Anime-related games were everywhere, and most of them, if they originally possessed audio dialogue, were fully dubbed by the related anime's voice casts.
Admittedly, most of them were being done by Bandai back before they went to shit, but it seems like they already knew how bad the game was, and only released it internationally out of obligation. Especially weird since, well, this series did have an anime that was being imported at this point. I would think it would have been a no-brainer to request the voice actors take a day and record the lines from that script. Hell, Battle Network 5, Double Team DS, had properly dubbed dialogue 2 years later, as limited as that was. Though even that lacked the dubcast despite Megaman Access still running at the time.
Yeah, in America they were a full year behind on the anime's release in comparison to the game's debuts, mainly because when they dubbed it, they split the first series into 2 seasons and ran it over 2 years. Again, the treatment of the Battle Network anime was very much in the vein of 4Kids Entertainment's bullshit. Anyways, it's not the least Capcom has ever cared about Mega Man, but like I seem to keep repeating, it's just weird.
The game opens with a pretty nice cutscene reinforcing this as occurring not long after Lan and Hub Hikari's battle with the life virus from Battle Network 1. But while things have returned to normal, in the internet age there's always another virus capable of making the rounds, which Lan and Megaman are made aware of when Meilu contacts the pair, asking them to help find Roll, who's gone MIA on an errand. They jack in, only to find Fireman has gone completely crazy and set the internet on fire! No! My family's ancestral retirement stocks! Fireman is, once more, used as a tutorial for the game's player and how to do everything. With his reach in just a normal, non-specified sect of cyberspace, he's, well, lit on fire. He's a lot easier to fight this time around as opposed to the first entry.
Not because he's less hard to deal with, but you now actually have a way of getting water chips to counter his element with.
Granted, that takes a lot of early game section farming to do, and in fact you will be doing the absolute most early game grinding out of all the battle networks to even get usable crap, which makes the rest of it a comparable cakewalk. But if you kill enough early state viruses for the zenny that drops from them, Higsby's chip shop is already open and you can buy Aquasword and Bubbler chips from him, which makes taking down Fireman a comparable cakewalk. The boss stages, however, are where you will see most of the game's story, with Lan and Megaman thinking Fireman and Mr. Match are trying to brew up World 3 trouble again, only for the Navi to just have gone completely crazy and operated himself. Match even giving up records that show he wasn't in control and had been trying to get Fireman to shut himself down.
And that is all because of the actual main threat of the game, the Zero virus.
Yes, the Zero virus, from Megaman.exe and Zero, that in that timeline gave birth to the Maverick virus.
Unsurprisingly, anyone that was in any way familiar with Mega Man's lore was initially confused by this, as they did not expect Capcom to draw upon X-era stuff for an alternate timeline Mega Man tale.
The pair are set on the trail of the Zero virus being the cause of this by Match mentioning a vaccine to it he'd purchased, a copy of which Lan sends to Yuichiro for analysis, which confirms that he was indeed conned. Lan uses this as an excuse to look into the mess more on the net, seeing if he can't find the distributor for the faux vaccine, which turns out to be a Navi named Starman, who after being found out, gloats about how many gullible people he sold it to. I mean, you'd really have to be dumb to fall for this oh-so-obvious con game.
Cut to obvious clip of Dex and Gutsman right here.
Yeah, easy to see this one coming a mile out. Gutsman is the next one to be infected. Free tip for dealing with Gutsman. Jumping is your friend. Since Gutsman always specialized in environmental control by cracking panels, that skill translates in this game to lots, and lots, and lots of shockwave attacks. As Gunman gets shut down, Yuichiro intercedes and informs them that the only way to help the infected Navis right now is to jack them out and shut down their PETs. Right now, all that can be done to help rampaging Navis is to force them where they can be isolated. And the game gives us our first round of victims. The bank, waterworks, shopping district, and Yai's house all afflicted by Navis going rogue. I head to Yai's first, simply because we have fire chips to take advantage of the environmental weaknesses of the region as it's all wood-based, with the boss being Needleman.
Now, if you're a fan of the anime series, you probably know this guy better as Spike Man, the Dark-Lloyd Navi of Miss Yuriko during Axis Onwards. This is, of course, an example of this game's existence factoring into the plotting of that adaptation with its Navi inclusions.
Yuriko is not Needleman's operator in this game, however, the actual net-op being an unseen gardener for the house, which is personally another big weakness for this game. While the series does have a lot of solo net navis that can operate without human assistance, as we saw from several of the bosses from Battle Network 1, part of the fun of the Battle Network series, in my opinion, is the varying personas that end up complemented and contrasted between Navi and Operator. Sure, doubling the number of characters means they end up seeming weaker, or one is focused on them superseded by the other, but it usually feels like there's more there than just a random, unimportant boss fight when you get down to it, as in-universe there's more than a sequence of programs directing the actions and intent. I spent more time talking about this than Needleman, as he's pathetically easy to take down with Life Sword 1 and just a few Fire Swords which I farmed back in Fireman's region. Heck, using Fireman's Navi chip is another easy way to deal with this one.
But from one of the easiest bosses comes the game's hardest boss. On I'm not even kidding. Brightman is easily the most difficult Navi to fight in this game, but only because of the barrier he has around him.
Which he will throw up with every attack you try and hit him with, no matter how strong or weak. How I beat him is I shot him with the Buster, and then immediately used a rapid attack chip, or to rephrase, an attack chip that has no delay to impact, so it will hit him very fast and trick his barrier window to be down. Since he's electric element, it'd be wise to harvest chips from Needleman's stage, especially his Navi chip, and thus being the reason I did him first, and go after him with that and the Zeta Cannon Program Advance, since you get the chance to rapid fire on him for that.
Like I said, Zeta Cannon's a bit broken in this game.
Next, it's off to the waterworks, and since Brightman's intermediary stage was electrically themed, you can now use the Electrips you have him to fight Iceman. Again.
Iceman can seriously not catch a break.
You can be my wingman anytime.
Though while Iceman himself is easy, look, time me on how fast I take. Getting to him is far from it, as God only knows why, but when they were making this level for the game, they decided to mimic the Vanishing Platforms puzzle from the original Iceman stage in Megaman 2.
Why would you do that? The original Iceman stage is widely considered to be one of the most difficult to complete platforming levels in video game history because of its vanishing platform sections. And these are not the smooth controls of an NES classic 8-bit game, where it's entirely the player's fault if they can't do it, but the shitty, unresponsive GameCube controller commands of a CGI-rendered mid-2000s platformer.
To be fair, the game does give you a few ways to get out of such platforming traps. The battle chips Double Jump, Dash Attack, and Star Arrow allow you to bypass obstacles like this that appear occasionally in the game, and using them is the only reason I ever got past this. This just leaves the bank being dominated by Quickman.
Another sign of the prequeling this game has at various points. Quickman would be first seen in Battle Number 2. Wonder what he was doing in the bank, though.
And to complement the jumping puzzles of Iceman stage, prepare to have your reflexes tested with this one. The bank computer has spike trap floors and walls everywhere. And worse... Oh crap, 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 running!
These things end up killing me a lot, but once again it's up to the strategic abilities of battle chips to get around this. Specifically...
Invisible! Yes, invisible chips make us immune to damage for a set period of time, and that includes these lasers. But even the weakest invisible chips are limited to 5, so you still need to be quick about it. Quickman... I don't even really know how I beat him. When looking back on the footage, all I can suggest is attacks that hit widely so we can't evade them. This ends the false vaccine rampancy cases, leaving Lan and Hub to just wait until a cure's been made. While elsewhere, Starman meets with another figure, planning to continue the spread of the Zero virus. Later, Yuichiro informs Lan that there's nothing they can do about the Zero virus right now. They need additional data on it to create a counteragent, giving Lan the idea to go looking, only for Chowd to butt into the conversation.
Oh, and speaking of, yeah, mistake on my part referring to Chowd in the games as Chowd Blaze in the first Battle Network review. That's the dub anime only, that's where my head was, and the game says name is Eugene Chowd. Eugene comes from an English romanized portmanteau of his Japanese surname, Ijuin, and Chowd is a French word meaning hot, which references his Japanese proper name, Anzan, meaning Flame Mountain. Thus, it's trying to keep the same root reference. If you're going to change the name for the importation, even though you really should not need to, and in much the same way they changed Lan and Hub's names to still pay references to the original word puns, this was probably one of the better ways to go about it. They still kind of messed this up since Eugene was supposed to be his surname even through the localization, yet in official material they made it his first name.
But yeah, as this is still the early side of the series, Chowd is another dick and denigrates Lan for trying to help by shoving his position in the officials in his face.
And in 7 games I have never once lost to you at any point, Chowd. Seriously, I've never lost to him. And I've had my ass kicked by Roll.
Of course, his antagonism and prideful ecocentrism does the exact opposite of convincing Lan to stay out of this for his own safety, and thus we get the next round of Navi locations from a secret admirer, the first being... Colorman? The fuck is he doing here?
Wait, never mind. It means more time with Medoy. I'll tolerate him.
Wait, what do you mean Medoy's not even around? Ugh, waste of time. The anonymous tip actually sends us up into Scilab's power plant, another familiar location, where we have a rematch with Electman, who is revealed to have been hacked so as to keep us from hunting after the Zero virus. But had they not sent us a letter with this lead, we would have had no leads on the Zero virus, thus we would have wandered the net aimlessly until either Megaman shut down from the Zero virus infection, or they were too late to even stop their plans in the first place.
Really, villainous guy? Did you need to be that dumb?
Actually, this was part of a bigger scheme to lure any and all official NetNavis to their doom through this trap. But since we're awesome, we got rid of the danger before anyone else was even hit by it. But this means the Navi hacking and Zero virus are connected. And unfortunately, the Zero virus by this point has infected Megaman and is affecting his system.
Were this the anime, or even in the game series, this would inevitably result in Hub getting a nifty powered-up form like, oh, I don't know, Zero Cross Mega Man! Really? No one drew that? Like, at all? That doesn't count and you all know it, damn it!
But since this game is sadly set before any of this series' various form change gimmicks were employed, nope, this is a more serious malady to befall him. Yuichiro manages to contain the virus for now due to his intimate knowledge in Hub's programming, but it's only a matter of time before relapse, revealing a rumor of a Zero account that may key into the virus's origins with World 3.
How did you learn about this, Yuichiro? What kind of information did you have on them before to not notice this? When we raided World 3's base last game, did someone collect their files and give them to you? Kind of a gaping plot hole.
Emailing Higsby about this gets us a security code to go outside the standard internet, and to the next series of Navi bosses. Ones that, in their infected state, Protoman is failing against since, his specialty is hitting hard, fast, and precisely. The first of which being Swordman.
I want one!
Who gives us a key to the next part of the region, which has really wonky gravity control, and requires you to walk on the ceiling to get past obstacles, and is naturally the domain of Gravity Man, who is very hard to damage simply from timing, as you need to get one of his attacks to hit him first. He gives up the key to a Cosmos-themed area, which is the hideout of Starman.
And in the name of David Bowie and John Carpenter, I am going to kick your ass.
Starman is actually an interesting boss due to the star arrows both being a hindrance and help to you, the first sign of their use as platforms, since when you beat him, you can get the battleship I mentioned before that lets you ride them like platforms past stuff. Though, ironically, as the story segment showcases, he was being used as a pawn as well. Thus, we can finally enter the real Zero account and face...
Zero.
Yeah, Zero.exe. I gave this away earlier. They did this because Zero was the Megaman X game's big breakout character. Zero was everywhere at the time. His first solo game had been released and done ridiculously well, with the sequel only a few months out. Obviously, this was a means to cash in on a popular character, and with the Alternate Timeline series, it made sense to recreate the character for this setting. The problem is, they already did that. That was Protoman.exe.
What people actually complained about Full Out, however, instead of that logical form of reasoning, is how they redesigned him to be far more, bulky. I mean, Zero is in there, he even still retains the divots for the boob orbs, and his yellow hair now appears as a cape.
But for some reason it even escapes me, I kind of like the design. I don't really know why, maybe because it seems more like a samurai's armor and his knightly disposition despite being a virus that gives it a resonant vibe to me.
As Zero in this series is a sentient virus, one that can think, and feel and understand the world around him through the infections that have been spread across the net.
Which is an amazingly close parallel to the artificial intelligence data anomaly from .hack, though here it infests other AI instead of, humans through a digital interface.
Hell, through the data gathering network was how he eventually accumulated enough data to spark that intelligence into existence. A naturally evolving NetNavi. A concept explored more with the Darkloids and Undernet denizens of the later games. Hell, the only reason we end up fighting him is not because he wants to harm anyone now, but simply because he thinks we're there to kill him. And he won't let that happen. He wants to live.
俺は生きてていいんだ。ただ、命をつなぐために生きてていいんだ。
Why does Toei hate that movie again?
There is no easy way to avoid Zero's attacks. You just have to endure them with invincibility granters and wear him down. Which, by this point, you should be holding a number of program advances with which to pull that off. But as the battle ends, we have something of a multiple choice ending. The bad end comes from this battle just continuing until Zero is deleted. However, if you happen to scour Global Area 3, you eventually come across a key item called the Zero Data. That data is the Zero virus in its most basic form, which Yuichiro can use to purge the Zero virus from the net, stuff it all back into one receptacle for, and by doing so make it so Zero himself can just be a normal Navi, never needing to harm anyone or anything, bar in self-defense.
However, this has all been a bigger ruse by a former colleague of Dr. Wily's.
This is the professor. No, not him. This guy was a disciple of Dr. Wily's and, in the wake of his defeat, chose to step up and finish what he started. The deconstruction of the world.
Dude, Wily's right over there, manipulating someone else to perform an evil scheme while he sets up another plan. Mr. Match is still working for him. Technically. How are you so far out of the loop to not know this?
He has used the time and data garnered by Zero's activities and his solo net navies to revive and strengthen the life virus, as the life virus are. And to turn up the we're so screwed, Yuichiro uninstalled the hub batch program from Megaman, though he would have it back in Battle Network 2, so they don't have its power to be able to face the virus down on even terms. With it now strengthened, they're narratively at even more of a disadvantage.
Nonsense! You're working with the battleship library from Battle Network 2! How could you possibly... Wait, right. No style change, no gate man for Gator, and they didn't give you Prism either.
Though before you can get to him, you need to get more internet access codes from more interim navies, which are all in the World 3 areas that can be accessed from the school map, in which you fight Shadow Man. Again.
Though still allowing him to show himself as more of a ninja than any pop culture ninja I can name.
Pharaoh Man, and I really wish at any point in time the games would actually have gotten into what his deal was. And last, Wait, what? Proto Man?
You seriously are going to make us kick your ass in every game, aren't you, Chad?
Actually, yeah, that is just what he wanted. As much as it pains himself to admit, Lan is a better Navi operator than him, with the skills to take on the life virus. This fight essentially being a show of encouragement towards the Hikaris so they can go into the fight with the mindset that they can win. Again, Chad's arc shown through the games is of him becoming less and less of a dick, and this does fit in contiguously with what's seen of him in the next game. Thus, it's off to the Undernet, which is infested with viruses all sporting auras that are a pain to deal with. Followed by a massive defense firewall that's hard to deal with, as it's difficult to hit the thing's weak spot even with the whole jump and shoot thing tied to hitting the mark. And then finally, Boss Rush! That is surprisingly easy if you farm the pop-up battleship from within Pharaoh Man's level, as it's just a super long and invisible chip. The final challenge is upon us, and the Life Virus Awe is actually a decent boss battle. Its elemental auras all pop if you hit with an attack stronger than 100 hit points of damage. The problem is most chips in the game do less than that, including the Hallowed Zeta Cannon, which was the key to winning against almost everything else. The same issue comes from using the Wide Blade Elemental Sword chips that create the Life Sword 3. They all do only 90 damage. You're going to need to rebuild your battleship folder going in to deal high-level damage, and filled with chips with all elements to negate the auras and get directly at the virus. And if you succeed, congratulations! The life virus is dead for good, the professor ratted out by Zero to the officials on his location and is thus arrested. Zero gets to explore the world and the net as a free net navvy, and is otherwise never seen nor mentioned again.
It will shock you how much it never happened.
And Lan gets to go back to being a 5th grade slacker in a world where Norton antivirus is less useful than toilet paper. Thanks for playing! Oh, before we wrap up, though, Base.exe. Yeah, he's here too. By getting on the Navi chips, you can find him in Global Area 3, buy a patch of broken panels you can fix with a repair battle chip. But like everything else in this game, he's something that can be beaten most reliably by using lots and lots and lots of Zeta Cannon on his ass after you pop his life aura. Though you can't actually defeat him for reals in this game either. But that time is coming.
It's hard for me to say that this is the worst Battle Network game because it's not really a Battle Network game. It's a failed experiment in amalgamating the playstyles of this sect and the main franchise to appeal to main series fans, and it blew up in Capcom's face. But even then, it's not that awful. It's just abnormal and has the expected bad platforming you were seeing from Capcom at the time.
I actually do kind of like and appreciate Zero.exe's story and inclusion, which the anime would revisit later during Beast Plus when they ran out of ideas. To be honest though, despite running out of ideas, their rendition of Zero's story is actually really good, and pays tribute to both what made the character originally so exalted in the X games, while revisiting the story points of the medium transfer and the continuity of the anime.
And due to my own limitations with playing any of Mega Man's niche of side-scrolling platformers, and there being no simple means of chip acquisition, this kind of prevents me from really playing this game for fun or enjoying the experience. I struggled a lot to get through this game due to my motor control issues.
So ultimately, this game feels like an unnecessary addendum to the series, making it a pretty easy skip, as even it ends by advertising the second game's events anyways.
Which we will be getting to sooner than you think. In the meantime, I need to soak my hands in some ice. All that rapid precise platforming left them in pretty bad shape.